My encouragement would be to not give up, continue seeking some element of relief. Understand that boundaries are not to punish the individual. Boundaries are to empower your life. If they're breathing, there's still hope. What we want your son to do, or your daughter, the loved one you're talking about, we want them to do something different in life. Yeah. And if you want them to do that, you're going to have to be willing to do that too.
Different.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hi, folks. Welcome into this episode of the APC Recovery Cafe. My name is Art Wimberly. I'm a person in long-term recovery and a volunteer at the Addiction Prevention Coalition. And today in studio, we have the Executive Director, Carrie Wimberly. Carrie, who's our guest today?
Good morning, Art.
Good morning.
Glad to be here. So today we have Roger Patteson. Okay, I've always used an R.
Keep going. You're going
Patteson. Is that right?
There you go.
I've always called you Patterson.
Patterson, but then take the R out.
That's hard. Wow. Hey, Roger.
Hey,
Roger is a friend, a partner with APC, but he's also a person in long-term recovery, which we want to talk about that today, and has been a person that has been working with different treatment centers and is now an interventionist. Is it Clear Path, right?
Clear Path Intervention, that's right.
Yep. So I want to talk more about that as well, because I think that's not something that people are familiar with enough to really understand what that looks like. And I know you guys are really busy, but first of all, just welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for being here.
And tell us about the drink of choice this morning, because it's the most elaborate one we've ever ordered for our guests.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to start off with a venti. That's the size.
Okay.
Yes.
It's cold brew. That's a concentrated cold brew processed coffee. We've got some whole milk in there. There's 2 blonde espresso shots. That's the strongest espresso shots that Starbucks makes. And then there's 2 pumps of brown sugar syrup in there, buddy.
Okay. So how did you come about wanting that? How did you even know such a thing existed?
That is 100% the result of my girlfriend working for Starbucks.
Yeah.
Yes. You got the inside scoop.
I got the inside scoop, quite literally. That is a pun. That was a great pun. Yeah, you know, I just am at my house, and then she shows up with these drinks, and she's like, "Try this," and this one has stuck for a couple of years now. So.
Yeah, well, it's impressive. I got to say.
So we always try to figure out, what are the drinks that people choose? Tell us about them.
Oh man.
So what does this tell us about you, Roger?
So the cold brew is like pretty high caffeine. We're adding a couple of shots of espresso to it. It's, I was probably up late last night on a phone call with a family.
Maybe.
This is what I need to get going.
I gotcha.
I'm assuming, like most of our guests, you didn't grow up and go to school and have, I think I'll grow up becoming an addict and then an interventionist, right?
Right.
So let's go back, tell us some of your story. How'd you get here?
I feel I usually tell it in a way that I feel like I have a pretty normal story. I had an alcoholic father and a very enabling codependent mom, and a lot of dysfunction growing up, a lot of change. Both parents were on marriage number 4 by the time I was 17.
Wow.
And there's a lot of new towns and new schools, and every couple of years a new stepdad, and every few years a new step-grandparent, new step-brothers, and a new house and a new school, and then a couple of years later, we're changing that. And not only are we changing it, we're moving across the country when we do it. And, that lack of stability that we see in early childhood development, I guess I was kind of a poster child for that. And I grew up blaming my parents for that and once I got into recovery, I learned that, for the most part, they were doing the best they could with what they had to work with.
Yeah.
And they came from their own issues, just as I created my own. But fear, I think, was very present at a very early age for me. Insecurity, the inability to trust people, kind of always looking at the negative, afraid to experience a lot of happiness, stuff like that was pretty present. I mean, even from age 6 or 7 on. And, that not comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 11, 12 years old, I'd already written a couple of suicide notes with a lot of just at the ideation phase.
Yeah.
Suicide, no real
No plan.
formal attempts, not really even much of a plan, just I just hate myself.
Yeah.
And I'll be 45 this year, but so I kind of came up in the heyday of the DARE program in schools. But I remember I left those rooms and those classes with a lot of curiosity and not a lot of respectful fear or anything like that, But, about 13 years old was when drinking started. And I really thought I had found the answer to suicide. I really thought that I had found a reason to live. So, it's all fun and games until it's not fun and games anymore. Right. And probably between 13 and 14 was probably drinking 3 days a week, 4 days a week maybe in those age ranges. But I was 15 years old the very first time I ever said, I woke up with a hangover and said, I'm sick and tired of this. I never want to do this again. What the hell are you doing, at 15?
Wow.
And, I think I was probably drinking later that night.
Yeah.
That's usually the story that I try and get across to families when we talk about powerlessness and we talk about inability to make healthy decisions despite being aware of consequences.
Yeah.
It started for me pretty young because even after that first 15-year-old conversation, I used for another almost 8 years after that. Yeah. So, multiple DUIs, 9 or 10 trips to jail from age 17 to 22, distribution charges, multiple states being arrested. I mean, just multiple trips to ERs. I went hard and I went fast.
Yeah.
I really did, and found a bottom pretty quick.
Was there a point in time where there was a shift from just the overuse of alcohol to other substances?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the polysubstance guy, from the start, salad bowl, from probably age 14
Pick
or 15
something out.
on.
Yeah.
I mean, the curiosity was real. It really was. Kind of always pushing that envelope, always looking for something outside of me, and always being willing to try what you had, So I got clean and sober a month before I turned 23.
Wow.
And I'll be 22 years next month.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really do.
What was the thing? What was the bottom? What was the impetus for actually getting sober?
Everything funneled down to me, finally. No more blame on cops and parents and girlfriends and jobs and job loss. And there was I felt like I had nothing else to throw my blame at.
Yeah.
I was kind of held to the fire.
Yeah.
But even then, we have this really nasty and I think deadly misconception in this world that someone has to 100% want this in order for it to work.
Right.
The truth is 90% of us walk in recovery at maybe a 55% mark.
Yep.
Yeah.
We might be that much over the hump.
Yes.
In our best days, 60%,
Yes.
I want this.
Yeah.
None of us are 100%.
Yeah.
No, we don't. The only people I've seen that are even close to 100% are those that have come in, gotten a taste of recovery,
Yeah.
and have gone back out, and were fortunate enough to come back in, and they're dead set. They know
Yeah.
what the hell they got to do.
Because they've experienced it.
Right. So
Yeah.
my surrender was this big,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
I
we
think
have
that's
to
important.
stop telling.
Yeah.
We have to stop
Yes.
telling the world that, well, they got to 100% want this.
Yeah.
My ability to make healthy decisions was adversely affected. I mean, I
Right.
wasn't,
Yes,
you're
capable.
trying to apply logic to me at that point. There's nothing logical about
Exactly.
active addiction. It's just not. So
Yeah.
it was an emotional decision
Yeah.
to like seek help, but it was still full of fear.
Yeah.
And even though I had an opportunity to get help presented, I was still questioning, do I really want this?
Yeah.
And I tell that story a lot with families because they say, I gave my daughter a brand new condo, a brand new car, I got him a job, I did this, I did that for him, but he still went back. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's nothing logical about this.
Correct.
You're going to bring yourself a lot of heartache if you continually try to apply rational thinking to people like us.
When you went to treatment, was that the first time you'd been to treatment?
First and only.
Really?
So you're a bit of an anomaly.
The first 6 months I went to recovery meetings, I didn't want to talk about it. I heard so many stories of relapse that I felt weird. And my sponsor said, man, you better start sharing that shit so someone can live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it really, wow, that was powerful.
Yeah.
It made
Yeah.
sense. It's like, man, we need to know that we can surrender.
Yeah.
No matter how little the surrender is,
Yeah.
it can be effective enough to grab this and go on and continue living
Yeah.
without having to beat your head against the wall multiple times.
Yeah.
And no offense to anyone who does.
Yeah.
That's their story.
Was in your story, was there, I mean, you talked about, at least in some sense, coming to the understanding that there's nobody else left to blame but me. Was there any, let's say maybe in the family system, did some of those folks either get wiser about how they were trying to help, or was that time was everybody just kind of alienated so much that you were on your own?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I remember like friends stop answering phone calls
Yeah.
and texts that I was sending out, and I remember it being harder to find people to go to the bar with, like, and I didn't know it then. Of course, looking back now, people were like, yo, but even the people that were still drinking were like,
Yeah.
let me put some space between this guy. The family progression started off in my teen years of, hey, this doesn't look right, Roger. Hey, do you need some help? Hey, we think you need some help. Hey, will you please get some help? To finally my family needing to do kind of an intervention practice of their own. Way less formal than what we do professionally.
Right.
But, and then once I entered treatment, my mother actually probably went to 30 or 40 meetings herself that first 12 months of recovery.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I wasn't even aware of it. We celebrated my 1-year medallion, and my mother came to the meeting, and she talked about having been to all those meetings, and I had no clue.
Wow.
She was going to meetings, sorry. She was going to meetings on her own,
Yeah.
and not telling me,
Yeah.
getting an education.
Yeah.
And ironically, like, my mother is still friends with dozens of my early recovery people, like on Facebook, and
Yeah.
some of these people still refer to my mom as mom. So, yeah, I mean, she went and got herself an education.
Yeah.
And learned.
Which we highly recommend
Yes.
and push with families is you've got to get your own path going here
Right.
to get an education. Nobody grows up and gets married and has children with the idea they're going to need to know about this disease and how to act as a family. So it's a big deal for APC and for us individually because of our own story to really encourage the loved ones. You got to find your own group and your own process and really work it hard.
Okay, interventions. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, most people, I would think that they're probably thinking about the show.
Right. Correct.
So, educate us. Okay, why is there an intervention organization?
Well, let me first talk about the show.
Okay.
One, it's great because it was, one of the first glimpses into this being like a regular thing that we've had maybe ever, right? But I mean, we probably put 15 hours, 16, 20 hours worth of work into a family before we ever meet with them. We have a family day, which is then an 8-hour day. Then we have an intervention, which is then 2 to 3, sometimes 8 hours itself. But like, there's no way you can capture that in a 1-hour television show.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right.
So, you know, what we look at is a lot of, let's go back to the 100% thing.
Yeah.
You know, someone's actively using their ability to make rational, healthy decisions is severely impacted.
Yes.
So, so it's no wonder why we get into a situation where an intervention is necessary, right? Like, you're continuing to harm, you're continuing to impact our quality of life. We are all at a breaking point. Something must be done, but yet you don't want to do it. And families get mad, they get full of fear, they get upset, whatever. What we want to do is come in and look at why isn't the individual accepting help? Why isn't the family redirecting or doing something different? What are y'all doing that is continuing to aid the situation, you know, to aid the negativity?
Yeah.
We do, it's just like, it's like a giant, like, 4-step inventory on the family.
Yep.
And so we want to identify y'all's patterns that are working and aren't working. You know, we, just like in individual recovery, we even do a full financial profile on what kind of impact is this having on your family.
Yeah.
You know, from a financial perspective as well. But,
Yeah.
you know, I guess with intervention too, what you're doing is you're kind of re-empowering the family. Somewhere along the way, the family has lost their ability to function properly.
Yes.
And so things are at a very dysfunctional operation.
Yep.
And we want to re-empower the family. So the way we structure our interventions is, even if the individual says no, and we go round and round and round, negotiate, and they still say no, when they follow our process, it's still going to be a success, because the family is now going to start to move forward with their own life.
Right.
And they're going to surrender the things that are harming them.
Right.
And at a certain point, you know, I'm there to advocate for the individual needing help.
Yep.
But if that defiance is there, that willful obstinance is there, and that let's just fight about it is there, then I will kind of back up and be like, you know what, it's time to represent the family.
Yeah.
I'm going to now let you know where your family is going,
Right.
what they're going to do,
Right.
the recovery plan that they're now going to be a part of, and an
Right.
accountability plan.
Yeah.
We would love for you to join us.
Yeah.
But if you don't, we respect that decision.
Yeah.
We may not like it, but we'll respect it.
Yeah.
You just need to know that there's some decisions your family's made that you're going to need to respect as well.
Right.
And, you know, like, it had never been put to me that way.
Yeah.
And so it's humbling
I
for the
bet.
addict in that situation. It really is.
Yep. And a situation that they probably haven't experienced. You know, this is different.
Yeah.
And it affects them. You know.
Right.
But I think the interventions of old, you know, there was a lot of coercion, I guess is the word, or a lot more. There's negative connotation to the word intervention.
Yes.
And what you're describing is a much more healthy pattern of intervening.
There's different models of intervention, and it's largely falling off. But there was kind of an older original model that is a kind of a walk-in, guns ablaze, and John Wayne method: beat them
Yes.
over the head, throw them over your shoulder, take them to treatment. And it's like, I could probably still do that, but your loved one's not going to stay in treatment.
Right.
Y'all aren't going to get the help that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And so we build this in a way that's called an emotional appeal.
Yeah.
I want to speak to you in a way that I emotionally appeal to you,
Yeah.
to where this looks like an opportunity that's being presented to you rather than a punishment.
Right.
You got off track.
Yeah.
Man. You know, a lot of us get off track.
Yeah.
The family wants to get back on track, you know, and so it's a love and respect model. it's a model that redefines what tough love used to mean. Tough love used to mean a very aggressive, nasty approach.
Right.
This is an approach that's built on, let's redefine tough love as boundaries, accountability, and responsibility.
Yeah.
All things that we're all supposed to be living with anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not punishing you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm offering you the quality of life that you have been bounced off of for whatever reason.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Whether it's mom, dad, your job, your loved one, your partner, your wife, whatever.
Yeah.
We're not really here to necessarily nail down the why.
Yeah.
You know,
We just need to move forward.
Let's stop the bleeding.
Yep.
and get a bandage on it, and then we'll start looking at how to heal.
Well, and I think, you know, speaking from the family support model, this is a very similar trajectory.
Right.
Because, like, when our kids were struggling mightily, kind of the, the standard was, a tough love type approach. You know,
Right.
I mean, I would like to go back and do things, based on the knowledge I have now. I can't,
Sure.
but
My mom too.
yeah. But, now what they're training us to do as we're doing family support is the craft model, which is really about staying as attached as you can healthily so that, when the loved one is ready, they will know that they can come to you and say, I'm ready,
Right.
keeping that connection together.
Right.
That sounds like very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. Again, let's think about it from if this entire addiction thing is like a bubble, and I'm in it, my dad's in it, my wife, my kids, we're all breathing that air, right?
Yep.
And just like any other virus, like we can all become impacted by it. And a lot of times, when I said financial profile, I'll have families look at what is a 1-bedroom in your house rent for that your son's staying in? What portion of the utilities, the internet, the food, the garbage, the water? Like, let's
The hidden cost.
Let's get a real number out here. Let's really look at that, and then what are you spending on their clothes, their gas, their car, their insurance, their
Cell phone.
cell phones? A lot of times, and this is not uncommon at all, but what are you giving them to go use with? How much? And we'll see numbers like $4,000 and $5,000 a month, and then we'll see numbers where, and I always ask them, like, if they're working, how much are they making? Right? They might be making like $800 a month, and I'm like, all right, mom, dad, this is $3,500 a month, like 2 months, and y'all are on that trip to Europe that you've always wanted. 2 months, you're paying off that car that you really want to get rid of that financial note with. We start to look at things that way, and it becomes about re-empowering the family. They have given up some or multiple things of their own quality of life. Their trust, their time, their love, their energy, their pain, their tears, all that. Yeah. And so and they've become addicted to the addict too.
Yes.
The trauma holds trauma.
Yeah.
And so moms can often think, I can never pay this car off.
Yeah.
Moms can often think, I can never get up out of this neighborhood that I'm living in. They have become beaten down as well, just as the addict has.
Yeah.
So their quality of life is lower.
Yeah.
And we want to re-empower that, and that's why I say, like, 90% of the time we get a yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But on that 10% of the time, if the family will still move forward with our guidance and suggestions, they're going to find peace.
Yeah.
And I'm going to label that as success.
Yeah.
I am, even if the guy says no, because when we put the arts or the carries into treatment, there's always 8 or 9 other, maybe 25 other people out there that are completely spun out off of the way y'all are living, the kids and the parents and all that. And so, for the last 40 years, we've focused on when art's in treatment.
Yeah.
But there's been very little resources put to the other 10 or 20 people that don't know what to say to Art. They don't know how to respond to him. They don't know how to hold him accountable.
Yeah.
So if I can re-empower that many, just on a numbers game, we're being successful.
Yeah.
If I can get 2 parents to decide to move forward with their life, no matter what their son does,
Right.
then that's a success.
Yeah, and we're constantly having this conversation, in the family support group about self-care, and about, okay, let's look at the reality of how you're living your life day to day and how much is being impacted, and what does it look like to make small incremental changes, to start taking care of
most
yourself.
of us in the family system drifted away from healthy little by little. We didn't do it all in one gap.
Sure.
And so then trying to figure out, okay, what financial strings or where are the attachments we didn't even see? Can we cut those? How do we cut them?
And ironically, the addict has to answer those exact same questions about themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I like to do when I'm on an actual intervention day, when I'm in front of the client is, so the day before in the family day, we've taken the family through a long look at addiction, at recovery, at treatment, how those things are three different things, but how they all do interweave. We've done financial profiles. We've looked at boundaries, accountability. We've looked at love. We've looked at response. We've looked at 100 different things, right? And then the next day, I'm like, look, guy, I took your family through a pretty serious inventory yesterday. It's the same thing we're asking you to do. And the more we look at this, the family always thinks they're not the problem, but the more we look at this, we see where what the family has to do in order to recover and live a new way of life is parallel to what the addict has to do. It's no different. And I love when I get the really like cold-hearted military dad that's like, this is my daughter's problem. I love when at the end of this process, that guy is like, holy shit, I've got work to do.
Yeah.
I love that more than anything.
Yeah, and we try to we use the same language, in the family support group. Our loved one needs recovery. Guess what? We do too.
Yeah.
Taking them through the steps or whatever. I mean, it's the same process.
And it can be humbling for the family.
Yes.
It really can. The joke that we sometimes say in recovery is like, damn, I didn't mean to get this clean. I didn't know I was going to have to do this kind of work. Yeah. And you see the family, man, they hit that same wall too. They're like,
what?
Oh God.
Yeah.
I gotta realize why. I mean, I had a mom that had alarms set in her phone for 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. to get up on the hour every hour to go into her son's bedroom and make sure he was rolled on his side so that he wouldn't throw up in the middle of the night and die and suffocate. And I was like, what would you do to get those 4 hours of sleep back every single night? That's the stuff that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the really impactful stuff. And, we've been really heavy in a treatment, pro-treatment kind of way of life in this country for probably a good 40 years now. Largely, though, the family has been neglected in that.
Yes.
In the treatment programs, they don't necessarily have the resources to spend on those 8 or 9 other people. Their focus is that one, but it leaves y'all kind of hanging.
Yeah.
And so.
And I mean, we wonder, constantly that, we've got 2 family support groups that meet, in person weekly. Okay, those things should be
full,
busting
8 days a week
out of the walls.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of advertising. We do a lot of media, social media. We do a lot to try to say, families, this is here.
Well,
for you,
think of how long it took us to really start addressing a stigma for the addict.
Yes.
Decades and decades. And the families, that stigma is like way more entrenched.
Yes.
Way even different a little bit than the addict themselves.
Yeah, and you watch these, parents walk in the door. They're terrified. They're deer in the headlights when they walk in, looking around like, what are people going to think of me?
Yep.
And we sit in the circle. Art opens it up. We say, okay, the first thing we'll do is go around, introduce ourselves. Whatever you want or comfortable with sharing the loved one that you're here, because of. And I'm telling you, we get around that circle and you watch their shoulders drop. I'm going to start crying. Every time I talk about this, I start to cry because I know what that feels like, and there's nowhere else that they can sit and talk about this amongst people that very much understand what they're going through, because they have carried all of that shame, and you got parent guilt that we talk about a lot.
Yes.
Some of it, you know, and it's complicated. It's a stew, because we all have things as parents that we didn't do well, and we know it.
Facts.
Yes.
Well, plus you've got those three primary things generally going on, whether you're aware of it or not. If there's an element of fear,
Yes.
there's an element of anger,
Yep.
and there's an element of guilt, shame.
Yes.
And there's a mixture in there for family members that we're not quite aware of that's
Yep.
driving us.
Yep.
And all three are usually present. One of them may be dominating, but there's a mixture going on in there with people that feel, as you said, the stigma of even saying that we're dealing with this, and then how do we even begin to address it, but also did I play a role in why they use? Is that stopping me from wanting to address it as well? Or if I stop doing the things I'm doing that feel like I have some control, they're going to die.
Yes.
So all three of those things are coming into play in some form or fashion, whether we know it or not.
Well, and two, let's further complicate this, and we're kind of just talking about like one generation here. Once we add in the elements of generational trauma, and now your issue went 10 times more complicated. So I worked with a family in Rogersville, Athens area, and it's the mom that has the alarm set on her phone. And when we did family day, we learned that the mom, her father was severe alcoholic, died from alcoholism, massive resentments that she had as a child, as a young adult, and as a parent herself. She was forced, she said, to go to Al-Anon meetings back in the 80s dealing with her dad. And she had kind of some trauma come up just when I mentioned the word going to Al-Anon. Right?
PTSD, right?
Right. So, but what we got out of family day was her attempts at trying to manage and save her son's alcoholism had every bit to do with what she didn't get as a child from her own dad. That's just 2 generations, y'all. Most generational trauma takes 4 to 5 cycles for it to reset. But then that's only if there's awareness and action.
Right.
You know? And so, you know, we're really starting to, alcohol in particular, we're really starting to see way more the effects of it, long-term effects of it. Because 5 generations is 100 years. On maybe 120 years. You think about every time a life cycle, 20, 25 years old, giving birth. Like we're talking long-standing history in this country with we have a dysfunctional relationship with alcohol in this country.
Oh my gosh, and that's not getting better.
No, and so
I saw your post about that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that was
it's
a great conversation starter.
I loved it. It just kind of hit me. It really did. But like, you know, and I think for some people they can get really like emotionally charged over these conversations to a point where they get frustrated, kind of feel like we're not doing enough. But I think we also got to realize we're tackling a 20-foot tall beast. You know, we're gonna have to chip away at it like this. So more conversations like this. You know, anytime we can lower the stigma, anytime we can normalize recovery, anytime we can normalize like addressing things.
Yes.
I mean, we have like my family. I was born in the 70s, but I came from a generation of you don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Or I'll give you something to talk about, you know, and
my dad was an alcoholic, but I mean, literally I did not. He was a functional alcoholic. Went to work every day, drank from the time he, came home till he went to sleep or passed out or whatever. Literally, I did not figure it out until I went to college.
That wasn't normal.
Yes.
Or not normal.
And like when people would, neighbors would come over, we didn't have many visitors because Mom kept it very tight, but he would take the Budweiser can, somebody would knock on the door and he would push it behind the lamp. Yeah. And we never talked about it as a family.
What was the family motto? Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel? Or
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
it was like, you don't address it, and my parents ended up separating, but it was never discussed. And that was like, my mom was like, you don't talk about our stuff outside of this house,
Yep.
So that perpetuates everything that's going on.
Well, I mean, I think even we've been at this for 24 years now. Even in the early times when we would go to, say, Al-Anon, you were beginning to pick up pretty quickly on the fact that what you were hearing in that group while we were there because of our loved one, you were hearing patterns from your childhood.
Right.
And starting to recognize some of those hidden dynamics.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
For clarity's sake, I want you to restate the name of the business, okay? And let's make sure people understand it's a for-profit business,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
What you guys do, although y'all do some things often that kind of puts the profit aside. But restate the name of the business, and if you're willing, how could they get in touch with you and your partner if they're interested in asking about what y'all do? And,
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. And I appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
So it's Clear Path Intervention, and it can be reached at clearpathintervention.com. There's a phone number right there on our website. You can call. We totally do a free consultation and assess what's needed in that individual's life. And it's not just intervention. We do a lot of just what we call organic treatment placement. There's a lot of people that call us that intervention isn't necessary. They're just looking for help, and we're happy to make a recommendation on that.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Then we also do family coaching, and that also doesn't have to be from an intervention. Their loved one could already be in treatment or already in recovery, but the family still needs to learn about how to have great boundary development or accountability to those boundaries. We do a lot of sober companion work too. There's a lot of times where, I've had a dad say, look, my son is adamant about going to this concert. Would you mind going to Atlanta, taking him to a concert for the night and, helping him, show him how to live without having to get high at a concert. And we love doing that stuff. And then sober transportation too. A lot of times people need to get from one level of care to another. It may not be real healthy for the family to be a part of that process, because the opportunity for manipulation and arguing and all that can still be high.
Yeah.
But maybe they need to get from inpatient residential to a sober living.
End on this. There's a family out there. They've got a loved one.
Okay.
Been struggling for years. Mm-hmm. Really think it's time. They've tried everything. What would be your encouragement to them?
My encouragement would be to not give up. My encouragement would really be to continue seeking some element of relief, or some element of a different or a new kind of resource. My encouragement would be to understand that boundaries are not to punish the individual. Yeah. Boundaries are to empower your life. Yep. They are to protect you. Yeah. And at a certain point, you're going to probably reach a place where you have to weigh out, like, am I harming myself just as much as I'm harming them? Yeah. And don't be afraid to answer that question. Don't be afraid to look at that under the guidance of someone that can help you process it. Yeah. But, if they're breathing, there's still hope. Yes. And the biggest thing, what we want your son to do or your daughter, the loved one you're talking about, we want them to do something different in life. Yeah. And if you want them to do that, you're going to have to be willing to do that too. Different too. You can't. I heard this thing, I'll end on this. I love golf as well. We didn't get into the golf, but I love golf. And this swing instructor said, you cannot go to the driving range with the same grip, the same swing pattern, and hit the same bad balls at the driving range and go out to the golf course and expect to do anything different or better or play better. Like, you have to make fundamental changes to your grip, to your swing, your ball height, your whatever, but golf is terrible about this. We get into muscle memory
Yep.
Families get into emotional memory.
Yes.
They stay and do the same thing. We go out on the golf course. We hit the same bad grip. We hit the same hook, the same slice,
Yep.
and sit there and go, why won't that ball fly right?
Yep.
And it's no different than with the addict.
Yep. That's a
But
perfect
we
analogy.
have to do something different too if we want them to do something.
Yep.
So, and that's called integrity,
Yeah.
right? Which is usually what goes first in addiction.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us for this episode of APC Recovery Cafe. We hope you'll join us next time. So long.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.